And so I want to talk a little bit about the changes that I've seen in the industry, and in particular the impact of technology. And there was sort of a pivotal point. It was probably 15 years ago or so when people started talking about BIM, that the penny dropped, that the intellectual property of designers was not what they designed, but it was the data that was going into the design. And it's taken us a while as a firm to really understand the power of that, and what it means in terms of our business model, and how do we monetize that, but also how it's really impacted and changed the business that we're in. But we are in a business, in the A&E business, that has really lagged behind many other industries. If you look at the transformation and change that's happening in the automobile industry, they've become mobility companies. The biggest hotel company in the world doesn't own a single room, Airbnb. The entire industry has changed dramatically, and we are an industry that's been has really been lagging. And so that's what I want to spend a bit of time talking about, is where I think that we're going, and where to me where the extraordinary opportunities are that are ahead of us as we. For my firm, as we move from being a design firm into what we refer to as a technology-driven design firm, and we're really on a journey quite quickly to becoming a technology firm. This is kind of an evolution of cities, and over that 40-year period, we kind of design things in bits and pieces, very very disconnected, and increasingly everything has become connected, so that we're now at a point where the things that we talked about as individual pieces are becoming completely merged and overlapped together, and that's what's driving change. But it's completely driving the way in which the industry is perceived. It's becoming very experiential, user focused. There's massive amounts of players that want to be part of the conversation. There's the public that wants to be a part of it, and it's all becoming a much more complex challenge. But the ability to embrace that challenge is the evolution of technology and how it's impacted our business. Some of the things that when I talk to some of our clients who are building large communities around the world, but some of our most interesting clients are in Silicon Valley, and which is has always been the heart of where technology changed. Startups have become big companies, and some of those companies are now in the business of so holistically covering everything that they are becoming the builders and designers of communities. And for them, what they recognize is that for them to be successful, they're creating communities that attract their own workers, the knowledge workers. A lot of them are young kids. They want to make decisions really quickly. They're used to things happening fast. They realize that they have to balance different goals and they have to understand and make decisions really, really fast. They're working at all scales. We're working at all scales simultaneously, from a building to an entire we're working at the scale of, in some cases, an entire country. And it's all about integrating all of those bits and pieces, and how do you get them to talk to each other, and ultimately create an enhanced user experience. One of the things that happened for us as a business and we're kind of in that green blob there on the slide on the left-hand side, is that when our business changed from being a design business to really a data business, all of the data that we're inputting into the things we design are everything that have to do with the life cycle of the building. So one of the changes for us is to move into that life cycle. That's created new business models for us. We're moving from a consulting fee for service into value creation, being tagged onto the success and value of the asset. The really interesting part of this for us as a firm is not only getting into that side of the business, but if you look out towards the future, we're designing, whether it's transportation systems or buildings or community schools, whatever, that these are living entities, and we're building into them. We're building in artificial intelligence into those buildings, and it's informing how they're used in the future. So these are living things, and when people talk about a digital twin, this is a real live. This is a live thing that we're duplicating, and the ability to embed artificial intelligence is really to me the most exciting part of where we're going as a business. It's changed our role, and from talking about architects as designers, we're orchestrators of many pieces that create big parts of cities. We're enablers. We're enabling decision making to happen really quickly through the tools that we're using in computational design. We're integrators. We're operators. As a firm, we operate transit systems in different parts of the world, and we're moving into the operation side of the buildings that we design. We're heavily involved in what I call engagement management. That the public wants to be part of the conversation, and if you can intelligently engage in that conversation, use both analog and digital tools, you have a much more informed public. They're more engaged in what's happening. They feel they're part of the creative process, and that starts to build a consensus of where we should collectively go in projects in parts of cities where typically it's been a very adversarial role. And the role that we can play deploying technology helps us get into that conversation. And ultimately, it's about creating healthy and sustainable communities. And our ability to integrate all of those pieces gives us that outcome. At the end of the day, we're creating places that are healthier, more sustainable. People feel better about it. They live longer. There's a lot of the positive outcomes from the way in which we and all of you in this room are engaged in that journey. There's been a change from our traditional role of who we talk to. We talk to developers. We talk to health authorities. We have specialist consultants. We deal with contractors. That's kind of the old model. The new model, there's a whole other series, and this is just a smattering of them, but there's a whole other group that's part of that conversation: third-party vendors, data providers, operators, and direct dialogue with end users. And that's it's just changed our business from a traditional model into being very much engaged as a true partner in many of these initiatives. This is, I really kind of like this slide because this is 2005 when everybody started talking about BIM, and this is a bunch of people in St. Peter's Square waiting for the Pope to be announced, and you can see one little guy in the bottom right-hand corner in the top one holding one flip phone. And 7 years later, the next Pope is showing up, and there's the crowd in St. Peter's Square, and it's a whole different thing. Technology has just kind of completely change their relationship and how they're living their lives, and we're now kind of 7 years past that, and one of the things that kind of always amazes me is I don't think that we as an industry are moving at quite the pace that we should be, and at the pace that change that happened in 8 years. There's a massive amount, similar scale of change that's happening in our business, and I think to a certain extent we are lagging a bit behind. This is not a diagram that I'll explain. I could hit every button, but this is a diagram of IBI's business model, and this is how we function from the beginning of design to the end of the ultimately buildings, and how they learn and evolve over time. It ties together data from BIM models, from user engagement, from all manner of data that we use to work in the business, and it's a totally different diagram. And in full disclosure, because I'm a guy that sort of learned technology and is supported by all these smart guys in that back table back there, and plus my 6 kids and 3 grandchildren. But I do know how this model works, and I do know strategically how it's really changed our business. And so where we are is we're kind of at that intersection between the physical and the virtual world. That's now the sort of where we sit in the business that we're in, and we move back and forth between that. We move from the physical world and the domain knowledge we've built up for 40 some odd years of designing all the pieces and bits and stuff that go into cities. But we're now into a different world. We're into the virtual world as well, and it's right at that kind of crest of that wave of the intersection between the two is where we sit as a company. There's tools that we use and develop, and we have a very talented group that directs many of that. Some of you know Brent, who's our design technology director from my office in Toronto. But there's really sort of 3 of them. There's 3 buckets. There's ones that optimize how we work. There's ones that move us into that area that I talked about being engaged in the life cycle, and there's those in user engagement. And there's other buckets, but I'll just touch on a few of those just to give you a sense of the kinds of stuff that are meaningful for us in our business. This is something that Brent and his group developed. This is on one of these big P3 infrastructures that were just talked about, Eglinton Crosstown project, which there's 29 sub-consultants that are part of our team, and clash detection is a massive exercise. And so this is a bot that was developed that basically manages clash detection. It works 24/7. You don't have to have somebody sitting there and go to sleep, and it basically manages it, controls it, reports it out, who's responsible for fixing it, and records the fact that it's happened and it's done. This saved probably, it was a really pressed schedule. This probably knocked 4.5 months off the schedule as we've gone through and done that. So it's been really meaningful. And we're now into working on the next generation where it's actually going to design the solution. So you'll have the ability to say, okay, I like that one or I don't like that one. And we open source this to all of our sub consultants. So it's while we developed it, we don't look at it as proprietary. It's something that we're just using to enable us to work more effectively together as a team. This is another one, BlueiQ. I won't go into the detail. It basically looks at water demand, water consumption, links it to the cost of energy, and creates an optimum model that optimizes when the system gets on and turns on the pumps, and saves and buys power at a low rate, and then and figures out. There's algorithms that go behind this, that what is the optimum model that gives you the most cost effective, and this is saving the City of Toronto. We've rolled this out of the City of Toronto, saving them millions of dollars in cost of operation. This is one that I'm very much involved in. This is our computational design group that is working to help design large master plan communities that links zoning data, spatial data, economics, building costs, zoning bylaws, and really designs it. There's a series of algorithms developed, and it just designs at warp speed millions of options of different ways of ultimately creating the optimal solution. And the thing that I really like about it is that because you can put in so many variables into it, it starts to look at sort of what future proofing is all about. If this happens, what are you going to do about it? And it's a tool that we use in master planning, and it enables us to do in days what it used to take us 6, 7, 8 months to do. The compliance checking, another one that is built into the design as you're moving forward. It's telling you where you've messed up. Do you have your exiting right, your occupancy loads right, and we're excited about this because we see this as moving to the point where we can use it to provide public agencies, approving agencies, a compliance checked model, which should, if they actually use it, will knock massive amounts of time and cost off our projects. And just to put it into perspective, that if you look at the cost of building, about 1/3 of the cost is in the cost of construction, about 1/3 of the cost is in land, and about 1/3 of the cost is in the process. This is the low-hanging fruit of getting at affordability, and it's something that is just being ignored by most approving agencies across the country. But this is the future, and it'll have a profound impact on dealing with things like affordability. Asset management, we're the front end, or putting all the data in that ultimately runs these buildings. So we have our own asset management platform that ties together our designs right at the outset. We use it as a planning tool, and then we move from there into an asset management tool. Smart cities, this works at multiple scales. The city has scale, community scale, and buildings scale. It's basically a smart cities platform that integrates all of the bajillions of bits and pieces of data that are out there, rolls them into a common platform, and then provides monitoring, dashboard information, whatever, for let's say whether it's a city or a private developer who's designing a master plan community or an individual building. This is a product we just rolled out. It came as a result of a hackathon, internal hackathon we had last year. And then less than a year later, we have a product on the street. This manages curbs. It's one of the most important pieces of real estate in a city because everybody's running for the same spot. All these package delivery guys that are showing up from Amazon and eBay and everything, and taxis and parking bylaws are not in sync with what's actually on the signs. And so this is a tool that puts that together and enables, whether it's a delivery driver or whatever, they know when they can use those curbs, and it manages the curbs. TraveliQ, this is traveler information. For those of you might know, this is 511. This probably now touches 25% of all of America. It's kind of a sort of a Google Waze thing that's connected to public agencies that deal with emergency response, what's happening on road construction. It ties all of that information together and gives you really intelligent information that's tied to much more than just what you get from a Google or a Waze. And so we continue to roll this out across the U.S. and right now we're covering at least about 25% of the country. A resident engagement app. Everybody says, "Do you have an app for that?" And this is one that we're developing for one of our condominium owners that are integrating it with the building itself. But the interesting thing about that, I find interesting about that, is that if our designers know that this is the end thing that a user's going to end up with, it's really going to impact his life. It starts to right at the outset, you're thinking about how is somebody using my building. And it really changes the design process right from the beginning within our office. Digital twin, lots of discussion about that. Of course, it's seeing is believing, and it's an extraordinary tool for people to understand how things work, virtual reality and augmented reality. And also for us in working across the globe in different offices, you're able to use that and interact with your different design studios across the country. What are the impacts? Seamless integration across project scales. I won't talk about all of these. Securing entitlements at a faster pace. That to me is a huge benefit. It happens quick. You can manage the unknown. You have a much greater crack at saying, when someone says "what if," like what if we do this, then you can actually answer that question. One of the guys from Google were up in our office about 2 months ago. And they were talking about we're getting too many questions. Our problem is that everybody keeps answering questions. We can't just stop and just get on with the design and finish it and whatever. And I'm saying, look, that's not the right question. It's not. You shouldn't be saying to your colleagues, "Don't ask me the questions." You should say to them, "I'll get you an answer to that in really, really quickly," and that's what we're able to do with the power of technology, is to just move so quickly and with an extraordinary amount of accuracy. The more data sets that you can bundle together from numerous sources, the better off your shot is at actually getting it right. This is kind of to conclude. This is where our business is, and it is still a human to human business. But again, if you'd taken this picture in a cafe 15 years ago, you wouldn't see two people walking down the street and they got they're talking to each other, but they're wired up to their computers. You've got one person there talking to their phone to their friend. You've got a couple of people that are taking selfies. You've got someone doing their Instagram picture, and you've got somebody another couple that are just sitting there having a plain old conversation. And that's where we are. We're in a world where technology is completely infused with every aspect of what we do, and it's extraordinarily exciting times. And for those of you who actually know something about this business, it's an extraordinary future ahead. And thank you very much for listening to me. Happy to take questions.
I just want, obviously you were talking about the shift in your business to have a different focus. How are you managing that culturally? I mean, you must have a lot of people that are very entrenched in traditional work, and how are you incentivizing and creating a culture that people want to move in these new areas?
That's a really good question, and you're right. There's barriers. People have used to doing things a certain way, and there's no question it's a challenge. Part of it is top down, which you sort of have to mandate that this is the way it's going to be. But the other thing is that there's a whole bottoms up culture that's happening, and a lot of the change is driven by young people in the firm who just understand it in a totally different way. They kind of get it. To them, technology is not a thing. It's just it's a way of life, and so it doesn't scare them. And then the other part of it is that the infrastructure that you're building on the design technology side is absolutely critical, and you need to have people in that business that not only understand the technical side of it, but they're just effective communicators and are able to talk and to have a conversation with their colleagues who are resistant to it. But it's a work in progress. But when it works extraordinarily well. If I'll just give you an example, there's a young kid in our Toronto office that was working away in one of the groups. I think it was the transit group, and we got him involved in a project that we said that a developer that decided that he wanted to have an endorsement and have a project which involved Pharrell Williams, who would be a co-designer. And so we said, okay, well, music's digital and architecture is digital. So we said to this guy, and we had a presentation coming up in Los Angeles to meet with Pharrell Williams, and said, can you take the digital track of his song Happy and layer that onto the building that we're doing, and every moving part in that building that we know that we can move, glazing, balconies, whatever, just run it with the soundtrack and mesh the two together. And that project just got announced in Toronto. It's called Untitled, and it started a collaboration in this case for, again, we talked about different partners. That's now a partnership between ourselves and Pharrell Williams and the developer. And when you have that as an example, and you say that where we're going is, we don't actually know where we're going, but there's extraordinary opportunity out there, that inspires people to think differently. And when I told that story to my guys in Los Angeles, and a lot of them were, it's a group comprised of people you just talked about, that why are we doing this? The penny kind of dropped that we're doing it because there's things that we don't even know we can do yet. And when you start to think like that, that starts to culturally change your organization.